I think the main point I wanted to take away, people to take away, is the fact that whilst job evaluation is under some degree of challenge, that it's too complex, time-consuming, inflexible, in fact it has a number of merits for organisations, not least the ability to protect against equal pay, to satisfy internal relativities, whereas market pay, which is the thing that is set to replace it as the principal way by which you determine your pay levels, it has its own problems, its own complexities, and isn't as scientific as it's cracked up to be. In both cases, job evaluation and market-based pay are underpinned by judgments, and the more explicit we are about the judgments and the choices we make in those judgments, the better we will be to satisfy the needs of greater transparency. I talked in my presentation about the fact that you could accuse both market pay and certainly job evaluation of being a black art. And I think that's because a lot of what goes on is behind the scenes in effectively the black box. And that's difficult when we demand much more transparency from our pay systems. So I think one of the things we have to do is be more explicit about how we've made the choices we've made. So in terms of market pay, what comparators do we use and why do we use them? What market position we're trying to attain and why we're trying to attain it? Which jobs we're using for comparisons? And similarly in job evaluation system, what are the factors we use? What are the weightings we give to those factors? On what judgments are those based? Hopefully they're based upon what is necessary for satisfy the needs of the organisation. But I think the more we can make those things explicit, the better. I think higher education as a sector has particular issues in terms it can be seen as a very separate sector from other parts of the labour market, relatively self-contained. Now, that may be true amongst the academic community, although of course there's an overlap with further education and indeed school education. I think that's less obvious with the jobs that are generic IT jobs, HR jobs, finance jobs, which are competable externally. So I think from HE's perspective, being aware of those areas where there is a genuine labour market and you're competing against others, and those areas where you're competing against yourselves. And if you are in a closed market, then it becomes even more essential that you should be clear as to why you're determining pay and the way you're determining it, because you should be open and will be open to public scrutiny. Well, I was challenged about Vice-Chancellor pay, and I think what that reveals is just what I was just saying, namely that you are in a goldfish bowl. Increasingly, you're tried in the court of public opinion before you are ever tried in a court of law. So you've got to be very mindful about what you're doing in pay terms for people to judge whether or not it's acceptable, whether you're giving value for money, given that a lot of the income that universities receive is from the taxpayer. You have to be able to justify your using that in a reasonable way. And I think the challenge for Vice-Chancellor's pay, it could be accused of being simply self-serving, that it's a little community that can push up its wages by competing amongst itself without really being tested against any genuine external labour market. So I think that is an issue that organisations need to be mindful of, and when they're thinking about their reward strategy, which is one of the other questions, I think that's something they need to balance. They need to balance the needs of satisfying their internal masters with satisfying their external masters. The second question I was asked was about pay progression and the fact that people are fixated upon about getting their increase each year and the challenges that poses. And that suggests to me that one of the difficulties that HE has got is that it has a system which has been in place for a very long time, where people have not seen other systems, they've not seen other ways of doing pay, and therefore they've come to be got used to systems. And I guess that what might be helpful is to get back to the base principles about why do we have pay systems in the first place and what they're trying to achieve. So trying to get to the idea of what is a fair level of pay, both internally set and externally set, and how quickly do you get to that fair level pay based upon your ability to learn the job, arguing that those people who are in simple jobs should get to their equitable pay level quickly, and those people who are in more complex jobs might expect to learn on the job and be remunerated accordingly till the point where they become fully competent. I think it's a very big question to think about the uncertainties of the future, and I think one can only pick out a few. I think it's interesting in the extent to which we should give importance to technology, the extent to which it's going to change the nature of jobs, remove some, add complexity to others. Brexit, of course, is a clear unknown in terms of what it's going to do both to student numbers and to academic numbers, and nature of that population, as well as research grants. So I would argue that universities should be thinking in labour market terms about what the implications of Brexit might be in different scenarios, depending on different ways in which that might play out. Another thing that's important is the demography of the UK. We are an ageing population, we have fewer younger people. That's going to affect both the numbers coming into higher education, but also the numbers of people available to teach those in higher education. And that's perhaps a ticking time bomb that might go off at the same time as Brexit. So we may find ourselves in a situation where we have fewer people available to teach, only compensated by the fact that we have fewer people who are there to learn. And one of the things that I think organisations might want to do is to look at how that might play out in their own particular circumstances. Because as one of the earlier speakers said, the way in which that will present itself will be very different for different institutions within the sector.